it. You're not going to grill me on the details of it.
I'm not going to grill you on the details. I want more of the background.
Yeah.
I mean, the context of the guy. Here he is. Again, he's a printer. He is concerned with society.
And so you'll be able to say he had 26 new letters and 20. I don't have the technical.
I mean, in your book, as you put it forth, you kind of think that maybe it was folly in a certain way, right? Which some people do, but for others, the whole tradition that went for hundreds of years thereafter is resting on Franklin's shoulders.
Right. Well, the reason it's a bit folly is he tries it out on Polly and it doesn't really fly, and he forgets about it. I mean, doesn't forget about it, but he doesn't pursue it. So.
But he infects Noah Webster, who then infects Melville Dewey, and Charles Darwin, and William James, and a whole bunch
Webster
of others.
Dedicates what book to Franklin?
The exact name of it, I don't know. We can get to that page.
All right. Sure, great.
And are you comfortable leaning forward?
Yes, I'm comfortable. Unless you want me to sit back, is that what you're saying? I'm comfortable.
Excellent.
Dissertations on the English language.
Great, thanks. Thank you. All righty.
Let's go.
Good. So, Ben Franklin.
Hold on one second. Do you want me to look at you or look at the camera?
I'm right here so that it's almost indistinct.
It's almost, but yeah. That's what I'm asking though.
What are you most comfortable with? A lot of people I've talked to prefer the eye contact, and you're good with the camera, you can go with the camera.
I'd rather talk to the person if that looks okay on the air for you.
Okay, and that's consistent with the way we've been doing it.
Okay, great.
This is the 16th interview that we've done. Okay. So, Franklin's this genius. He's involved in spelling and printing and re-architecting the country and what have you. What draws him into thinking about language in this way?
You know, as a young kid, Benjamin Franklin really wanted to be a writer, and his dad was going to send him to Harvard. But he was not exactly cut out for the ministry, which is what his father wanted him to be. And so instead of sending him to college, his dad apprentices him to his brother's print shop in Boston, where he gets to work in a... can we start that over? Sorry, I know it's right. When Ben Franklin was a kid growing up in Boston, it was at first thought he was going to go to Harvard, but instead his dad decides to apprentice him to his older brother, who runs a print shop and a newspaper. So Franklin had to teach himself language, had to teach himself how to write. So he's pulling down all the books from the bookshelf of his brother's print shop and reading the wonderful essays of Addison and Steele and The Spectator and taking notes and then trying to put the notes aside and recreate the essay and see if he can improve it. And he said, usually I had to compare my essay to the original and mine wasn't as good, but every now and then in a few particulars, I thought maybe I had equaled or even excelled the arguments made by these great writers and that I myself could be a tolerable writer. So he's this wonderful self-taught writer who becomes the most popular and the best and the most conversational and the most logical writer of that century in America.
Excellent. Do you know if he had any experience with children and reading that was part of his motivation? And I mean, why did he take time to think about, wrap his mind around the alphabet?
Trying to think. I don't know any, major teaching of children. He was, I'll go into the why he wrapped his mind around the alphabet. Franklin was a very scientific, very logical person. He said, always, let's look at what works, what's practical. And he looked at the English language, and it wasn't practical. It had weird letters. It had consonants that had nothing to do with the sounds. It was superfluous. And he wanted to make everything logical. Throughout his life, he takes the Bible and is rewriting the Lord's Prayer to make it more logical and more accessible. And he does that with the English language. He tries to change the letters and the fonts so that it becomes much more sensible, more scientific.
Excellent. What were the responses? You know that he inspired Noah Webster in a way.
When Franklin does his new language and new characters and stuff, at first he tries it out on Polly Stevenson. Polly was a wonderful young woman in England, the daughter of his landlady, and Franklin had a very flirtatious relationship with her, but also an engagement with her mind. So he wrote her letters using this new alphabet. And Polly was very solicitous at first, even though the letters are almost unreadable. But in one of the letters, it's quite amusing. She finally says, okay, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to sign myself and in this letter in the traditional sense, because it's so much easier for me. She raised a lot of objections to this language. Said it pulls words away from their Latin roots or their Old English roots. It pulls them away from their meaning a little bit. And he said, no, people will get used to that. It's more logical. It'll help people learn the language. And so this wonderful exchange of letters is his way of working out the idea. Years later, the letters he wrote to Polly Stephenson are given to Webster. Webster publishes them. Webster dedicates his dissertation on language to Benjamin Franklin. And so it's this exchange of letters with Polly Stephenson that inspire Webster and eventually others to try things like this.
Excellent. I think that does it.
Wow, you made it fast.
Well, you wanted to.
I know. I'm sorry I had